the exact location of your emergency.
She said, I feel nasty about what I've done.
And I was quiet for almost a year.
Comes back to a Natalie Amos, D. David revoked.
That is repulsive.
This looks like a firing squad.
It's an investigation that began after police closed the book on a suicide here at the Stallman building. Now, this detective's report contains allegations and names that are so compelling, we just had to explore them. Friends of Lee Terry say she had it all. She was beautiful, smart, classy, from a Belmead family, her father a surgeon. But there was a dark side, her friends say. She drank and mixed alcohol with prescription drugs. A series of drunk driving charges landed her in the court system. Her interactions with a judge and a defense attorney and a trip to Mobile, Alabama, became part of a police investigation into her death.
911 with the exact location of your emergency.
May 25, 2016, a maintenance man at the Stallman building in downtown Nashville calls 911.
I'm pretty sure that there may be somebody passed away.
Lee Terry was found on her bed, a Smith & Wesson handgun similar to this one at her temple. Police later established she'd been dead about 3 weeks. Metro Police conducted an investigation that would take months. They eventually concluded it was a suicide. But during the investigation, witnesses whose statements were recorded by Metro detectives recounted threats that they say Terry had made in Alabama, threats to expose 2 of the men on that trip, General Sessions Judge Casey Moreland and his friend, defense attorney Brian Lewis.
You can sit wherever you want. You can sit. Yeah.
Lewis was interviewed the day after Terry's body was found. The apartment where she was found, both her name and Lewis's name are on the lease.
Yeah, I co-signed the lease, I think, around beginning of April.
Lewis would confirm something in a second interview a month later. It was recorded at Central Precinct. He confirmed that he and Terry had a sexual relationship. Lewis is married.
It would be classified a friend and a friend with benefits. Had I had sex with her on occasions? Yes.
The relationship began, he told police, after he represented Terry in a 2013 DUI case, a case that records show ended with Terry serving no jail time, though it was her 3rd offense, a case where court records show Judge Casey Moreland ended Terry's probation early. A woman who said she was having an affair with Judge Casey Moreland got her fines dismissed, but that's not all.
I mean, my $1,200 was just gone.
Natalie Amos wasn't robbed, she got a windfall. Old court fines, she said, were dismissed by Judge Casey Moreland. And that's not all. Court records show Moreland helped her with traffic tickets. Moreland texts her, "I may can help in Davidson County." He reminds her to send a picture, and she does. They exchange suggestive comments. He says, "So you want me to give you a little attention," and mentions a midday quick and dirty. So what happened to the tickets? We found these records at the traffic court clerk's office. The case is retired with no fines due.
I'm very grateful when people are in a position to help me, and sometimes everyone needs help.
Natalie texts the judge the following week mentioning the tickets and tells Moreland, "Thanks so much for your help, much appreciated." Moreland texts, "They are gone, ha ha ha." Amos writes, "I know, that's crazy." Moreland asks about meeting at her apartment the next day. "What are you doing tomorrow between 3:30 and 5:30? Just be horny and naked," the text says. Then Moreland's texts go into details that we can't say on TV. It isn't the only time Moreland helped Amos. June 16th at 3:20 in the afternoon. Motorcycle officer Michael Douglas of Central Precinct tells me he's just starting his shift when he notices a woman driving without a seatbelt, and her tags are expired.
93-6 Peabody, Tennessee.
He calls dispatch to find out if she has a valid driver's license. She doesn't.
Comes back to a Natalie Amos, D. David revoked.
She's Natalie Amos, a very close friend of General Sessions Judge Casey Moreland. She says she calls the judge, then they send a series of text messages back and forth. She shared what she said were the texts between them. Moreland texts her, "Find out the officer's name." She writes, "Michael Douglas." Moreland writes, "If I need to talk to him, I will." She texts Moreland that the officer is running her license, adding, "It's the last thing I need right now." Moreland texts, "I gotcha, girl." Then he texts, "What's happening? Did you drop my name?" But the officer continues to write her a ticket until Moreland makes a phone call to the officer's supervisor at Central Precinct. Metro Police verify what happened next in a written statement. That Sergeant Mark Byrne, Douglas's supervisor, was contacted by Judge Moreland. Police say Moreland tells the sergeant that Amos was on the way to his office for a meeting. The statement says Byrne perceived that Judge Moreland wanted the motorist to be allowed to continue to his office. Byrne rides his police motorcycle over to where Amos is stopped to convey that message to the officer. Moreland texts Amos that help is on the way, and she writes, "Sweet." Amos is allowed to drive away on a revoked license. She doesn't get a citation for it, just the ticket for no seatbelt and expired tags. So what kind of business did Amos have with Moreland at his office the day she was stopped by the motorcycle officer? Amos showed us texts she said were between her and Moreland. The texts back and forth show they didn't have a meeting planned, no official business. In fact, when she was stopped, Amos was on her way to meet the judge at a bar called the Batter's Box. After they met for drinks, Amos said they did go back to the courthouse to have sex in Moreland's office. Moreland texts her at 6:30 that night, "Damn, you're hot." The next afternoon, Amos texts that she's super grateful for his help. The judge texts, "Just used my superpowers." And then, "My desk still has butt marks on it." Our I-Team investigation also found Moreland sending texts while he was on the bench, once mentioning he was listening to information about a wiretap during a cocaine case, another time sending a picture of the defendants before him. And sometimes he referred to the defendants in his sex trafficking and drug court as hoes and junkies. We shared those texts with law professor Charlie J. He's a Carnegie Fellow who's testified before the U.S. Senate as an expert on judicial ethics.
If what is reported here is true, this may not be a judge who is well suited to the bench.
Our Channel 4 I-Team broke story after story on Moreland. 2 months into our rolling investigation, federal marshals showed up at the judge's door. They took him away in handcuffs. Moreland charged with attempting to bribe a witness and set her up on phony drug charges. Now the witness was Natalie Amos, the woman who had been the judge's lover, the woman who told her story only to Channel 4. And the U.S. Attorney's Office, they had the money shot.
That is a photo of the money that was offered to person one in this particular case to sign this affidavit.
$5,000 money Judge Casey Moreland allegedly offered to get Natalie Amos to recant the story she told Channel 4. In our exclusive interview, Amos told how Moreland helped get her out of legal trouble. She said they had sex in his office. Judge Moreland appeared in court today the way he normally sees the defendants before him, shackled hand and foot. The U.S. Attorney's Office announced they took him into custody because they feared he was jeopardizing their investigation. The criminal complaint also says Moreland tried to get a police officer to set up Amos on phony drug charges.
Finally, the complaint further alleges that Moreland engaged in conversations and planning to have drugs planted on person one and orchestrate a subsequent traffic stop during which the drugs would be discovered and person one would be arrested and her credibility destroyed.
At a hearing in federal court a few days later, we see the undercover video that forms the backbone of the U.S. Attorney's charges against Moreland. An informant, Wired, records key evidence against the judge.
We're here for the detention hearing and probable cause hearing.
Judge Casey Moreland, in a baggy green jail jumpsuit, sat and listened as federal prosecutors laid out the case against him Friday.
Who does he work for?
He does something for DEA and...
In court, Moreland watched himself on hidden camera, having conversations with an informant wired by the FBI in March. Moreland talked to the informant about finding an officer to plant drugs on his former lover, Natalie Amos, to discredit her.
Is he going to be the one to pull her over?
He'll be the one to pull her over. But he's just said, his main thing was like, as long as it don't come back to me.
In the recordings, Moreland also arranges for the man to offer a bribe to Amos, some $6,000 to say she made it all up. that they'd never had sex in his office, and that their explicit text messages were all spoofed.
A Hendersonville woman is fighting a court system that threatened to strip her of her freedom and independence, yet she didn't break any laws. And her family says it could happen to anyone. The News 4i team's Natalie Amos joins us.
Well, if Reba Sherrill had been in prison, she would have had more rights. It all started when she went to a Nashville hospital with a medical problem. Reba Sherrill may be in a wheelchair, but she's ready for a fight.
I'm not going to let them just get away with this.
She's fighting for the right to make her own decisions, something you may take for granted. Her daughters don't anymore.
My mom's not a criminal, but yet they're treating her like a criminal.
It all started in August. That's when Reba went to Vanderbilt. She was having complications from a car accident last year.
When I went on Tuesday night, they kept me. And that was the beginning of a nightmare.
Reba went to Vanderbilt for a physical problem, but Vanderbilt's lawyers filed papers in probate court saying that Reba had a borderline personality disorder. Vanderbilt asked a judge to appoint someone to take control of her affairs. They said no family members were willing to do it. Probate Judge Randy Kennedy approved Vanderbilt's request the same day without consulting Reba or her family.
In August, on the 23rd, they went to court and asked the judge to appoint someone to make my decisions. They didn't tell me this hearing was taking place.
And it didn't matter. It didn't matter that, they didn't notify family. It didn't matter that she had family members that were willing to step in. It didn't matter.
The judge appointed this Nashville attorney, Catherine Armistead, to serve as what's called a fiduciary. That gave Armistead power over where Reba would live, what doctor she would see, and control over all of Reba's money.
They wiped it out. They took all the money out of my bank accounts. Didn't even warn me, didn't even tell me they were going to do it. They redirected all of my personal mail to the attorney that was serving as the fiduciary.
Reba was trying to rebuild her house in Hendersonville. It had been damaged in a fire, but now she couldn't pay the contractors. Armistead moved Reba to a nursing home. Her family says Reba was given mind-altering antipsychotic drugs, even though her own family doctor wrote this letter saying those medications could cause a life-threatening adverse reaction.
It didn't matter that she had a neurologist that said she was allergic to it and shouldn't take it. They were just shooting her with it anyway.
Vanderbilt's lawyers filed papers with the court saying that Reba was paranoid and delusional. Reba says she believes it was because she told them she was highly sensitive to pesticides and herbicides.
And they said that because I eat only organic food, that I was paranoid and psychotic.
Vanderbilt filed more papers asking the court to give Armistead broader powers. They asked that Armistead be named Reba's conservator permanently. That would give Armistead the right to make end-of-life decisions, to control all of her medical care, decide where she lives, and sell her property.
Basically, when you go through this situation, it's like you've already died. They take everything. They sell, they liquidate.
A hearing was set for October 11th. 2 days before that hearing, Judge Kennedy signed an order giving Armistead control over the settlement that Reba got after the car accident. It was worth more than $1 million, money that would then become available to pay all the fees that are racked up in conservatorship cases. Hourly fees charged by the lawyer the judge appointed to represent Reba, and hourly fees from Armistead. It's up to the judge to approve the bills. The family has no say.
I'm kind of scared of how much they're going to end up charging her.
On October 11th, News 4 was there as the family fought the proposed conservatorship. Lawyers spent hours in negotiations behind closed doors. In the end, they agreed that Reba's brother could be her conservator. Armistead is out of the picture.
If somebody's going to have to be over me, that it's him.
There's something that Reba's family has never understood. Why did Vanderbilt's lawyers keep fighting to establish a conservatorship, even long after Reba had been discharged as their patient?
Again, Ms. Amons, I'm sorry I'm not at liberty to speak outside the courtroom about this case. Thank you.
My attorney asked them that question, and they never really gave an answer.
The family wants the laws changed, giving more protection to ordinary people, protection from a system they feel is un-American.
This could happen to anybody.
They claim that this is put into place, these conservatorships, to help the individual, to protect them. But all I see is it's abuse.